Everyone knows how this story goes. Red Lobster died of all-you-can-eat shrimp. In 2023, somebody made the $20 ultimate endless shrimp deal a permanent menu item. TikTok turned it into an endurance sport, and 11 months later, a 56-year-old restaurant chain was in bankruptcy court. Cause of death? Generosity. Here's the problem with that story. The shrimp deal lost about $11 million in its worst quarter. The company that filed for Chapter 11 was paying $190 million a year in rent and carrying $294 million of debt. The shrimp was a rounding error wearing a bib. The rent was the story, and the rent traces back to one deal signed in 2014 that runs on the exact same paperwork that killed Sears. If you've seen the last two of these, you know the shape by now. A company built on one great operating idea, a more profitable business hiding inside it, and then owners who stop running the company and start harvesting it. Blockbuster and Sears took decades. Red Lobster ran the whole pattern in about 10 years, with 3 different owners, and every one of them left with a piece. Start in 1938 in Waycross, Georgia, where a 19-year-old named Bill Darden opened a 25-seat lunch counter called the Green Frog. Slogan: service with a hop. 2 things about that diner matter. Darden refused to segregate it in Jim Crow, Georgia, which tells you how he handled pressure. And it worked. 25 years later, he bought a famous Orlando seafood house called Gary's Duck Inn, which proves something nobody quite believed yet, that mid-price seafood could sell to people who lived nowhere near the water. So in January 1968, in Lakeland, Florida, an inland city chosen on purpose, he opened a restaurant built entirely on that bet and called it Red Lobster. And the bet was never really about cooking. Getting ocean fish onto tables in the middle of the country meant cold chains, sourcing, volume. Red Lobster was a logistics company that happened to fry shrimp, the same way Sears was a logistics company that happened to sell socks. General Mills bought the chain in 1970 when it was 3 restaurants and scaled it like a cereal brand. 24 restaurants by 1971, 174 by 1976, 350 by 1983, and passed $1 billion in sales by 1988. Red Lobster became America's first truly national casual dining chain, and it introduced the middle of the country to things it had never eaten: popcorn shrimp, snow crab, calamari. In 1992, it started handing out a garlic cheese biscuit named after a bay that does not exist. Cheddar Bay is a made-up town. The biscuits are real, about 1 million of them a day at the peak. And in 1995, General Mills spun the restaurant division off as its own public company. 1,250 restaurants, the second most valuable restaurant company on earth behind McDonald's. They named it Darden Restaurants, after the man from the Green Frog who had died the year before. Now, 2003, because Red Lobster already ran the endless shrimp experiment 20 years early with crab. That summer it offered all-you-can-eat snow crab for $22.99, right as crab prices spiked. Customers did what customers do. The promotion took a $3.3 million bite out of earnings. Darden's stock lost around $400 million of value in a day, and Red Lobster's president, Edna Morris, was gone within weeks. On the earnings call, Darden's chairman Joe Lee, who had been the manager of that first Lakeland restaurant in 1968, delivered one of the great lines in corporate history. It wasn't the second helping, it was the third that hurt. But here's the part that matters. Nothing happened. The company took the hit, fixed the menu, moved on. Because it was owned by an operator with a strong balance sheet that owned its own buildings. Remember that. The same mistake comes back in 20 years, and the second time it files the company into bankruptcy. The difference won't be the promotion. It will be who owns the floor it's served on. Because in 2014, Darden, under fire from activist investors, sold Red Lobster to a private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital for $2.1 billion. Here's how the purchase was financed. Golden Gate immediately sold about 500 of Red Lobster's buildings the chain had owned outright for decades, to a real estate trust for $1.5 billion and leased them back. The real estate money funded the buyout. Golden Gate reportedly put in less than $600 million of its own. Red Lobster's own buildings paid for most of the price of Red Lobster. If that sounds familiar, it's sabotage. It is precisely the Sears maneuver, except it happened a year earlier. Eddie Lampert wasn't even first, and the leases did what those leases do. Above-market rents with automatic 2% annual increases forever on a chain whose sales were flat. By 2023, the rent bill was $190 million a year, about 10% of revenue in an industry where healthy is 5 or 6. $64 million of it was rent on restaurants that lost money, restaurants the company mostly could not close because hundreds of leases were bundled into master leases. Miss one, default on all. The restaurant chain had become a delivery mechanism for rent. Then the second owner arrived, and this is the part the shrimp memes get exactly backwards. In 2016, Thai Union, the Bangkok seafood giant that supplied Red Lobster's shrimp, bought a quarter of the company for $575 million, roughly what Golden Gate had reportedly put in for all of it. In 2020, Thai Union and its partners took over completely, promising publicly to stay out of day-to-day operations. What followed was 5 CEOs in 5 years, and according to Red Lobster's own bankruptcy filings, something worse. Under the banner of a quality review, the company's 2 other breaded shrimp suppliers were eliminated, handing Thai Union an exclusive contract at higher cost, outside the normal bidding process. Restaurants then went days, sometimes weeks, without shrimp. Think about the shape of that. Blockbuster's real product was the late fee. Sears' real product was the credit. And to Red Lobster's owner, Red Lobster wasn't the business at all. It was the customer. The supplier had bought its own buyer. Which brings us to May 2023, when the interim CEO, Paul Kenny, a Thai Union ally, made $20 endless shrimp permanent over the objections of his own management team. A shrimp supplier's man made unlimited shrimp the centerpiece of the menu. Thai Union's CFO told investors, "It's $20, so it's really affordable." By November, his line was, "It didn't work. Traffic rose 4%. Margins evaporated. The deal lost $11 million in a single quarter. The price climbed to $22, then $25, and the company finished the year $76 million in the red, cash falling from $100 million to under $30 in 6 months. And yes, that's bad, but run the comparison the memes never run. $11 million is what Endless Shrimp lost in its worst quarter. It's also 3 weeks of Red Lobster's rent. The end came fast. March 2024, a restructuring specialist named Jonathan Tibbus takes over as CEO. In mid-May, 93 restaurants close overnight. Their entire contents, fryers, booths, lobster tanks, sold off in winner-take-all internet auctions. Days later, Red Lobster files for Chapter 11 in Orlando, a short drive from where the first restaurant opened in 1968. The filing is blunt. It complains that a material portion of the leases are priced above market. It accuses Thai Union of outsized influence over shrimp purchasing. Thai Union walked away and wrote off $530 million. And in September 2024, after barely 4 months, Red Lobster came out the other side, owned by its lenders, led by Fortress Investment Group, with about 130 fewer restaurants than it had in the spring. Today, the company is run by Damola Adamolekun, who was 35 when he took the job, a former P.F. Chang CEO with a $60 million war chest and a stated goal of executing the greatest comeback in the history of the restaurant industry. He killed Endless Shrimp on arrival. Asked why, he said, "Because I know how to do math." And then he started doing something Red Lobster hadn't seen in a decade: operating. Seafood boils that went viral, a happy hour, $20 lobster rolls at Lobsterfest, fixing the carpets, the lighting, the music, the air conditioning, the small things a landlord never fixes. And it's working. Sales are growing again, up around 10% year over year, and the company expects to finish this fiscal year in the black. To be clear, the hole is deep. Sales are still well below where they were before the bankruptcy, and roughly 100 unprofitable restaurants are still trapped inside those 2014 leases, still paying escalating rent 12 years later. The deal outlived everyone who signed it. But for the first time since 2014, the person running Red Lobster is trying to build the company instead of billing it. So what killed Red Lobster? Not the shrimp. Red Lobster survived unlimited crab in 2003 and turned it into a punchline. What it couldn't survive was ownership. Darden took a $2 billion exit. Golden Gate took the buildings. Thai Union took the supply contract. The customers just took the shrimp, and they're the only ones anybody blamed. Red Lobster wasn't eaten by its customers. It was carved up at the table by everyone who ever owned it. Same pattern, fourth time. Next autopsy. The toy store everybody says Amazon killed. Amazon didn't kill it. It was bought with $5 billion of borrowed money in 2005, and no one selling teddy bears can pay $400 million a year in interest on their own purchase.